Hey there! Welcome to another episode of Fluent Minds podcast, the podcast where we learn English easily by listening. Today, we will explore the world of travel while helping you improve your English. I'm Alex, your host for today's journey, and as always, I'm joined by my fellow explorer, Sarah. How are you doing today, Sarah?
I'm doing great, Alex. Excited to talk about one of my absolute favorite topics, traveling. And even better, we get to help our listeners improve their English along the way. It's like going on an adventure without leaving home.
Exactly. So, whether you're learning English because you love traveling, or you're just dreaming of your next vacation, this episode is for you. We'll be covering common phrases, vocabulary, and conversation tips that you can use when you're out exploring the world. And of course, we'll share some of our own travel stories, because what's a travel podcast without a few tales from the road, right?
Oh, definitely. So if you're ready, let's dive in.
Let's start with some essential vocabulary for traveling. When you're in a new country, it's really helpful to know the basic words and phrases. It can make your trip smoother, help you meet new people, and give you the confidence to explore more. So, Sarah, what's one word or phrase you think every traveler should know?
One of the first things that comes to mind is "excuse me." It's so useful, whether you're trying to get someone's attention, asking for directions, or just being polite in a crowded place. You can say, "Excuse me, could you help me?" Or, "Excuse me, where's the nearest train station?" It's polite and shows respect.
That's a great one. And actually, when you're traveling in English-speaking countries, or anywhere where English is widely spoken, politeness is super important. Words like please and thank you can go a long way. People appreciate good manners no matter where you are.
Exactly. And another important phrase is, "How much does this cost?" You'll probably be shopping or buying food, so knowing how to ask about prices is key. You can also ask, "How much is it?" Or, "What's the price?"
Yeah, and speaking of money, you might also hear people say, "Do you accept credit cards?" or "Do you take cash?" Understanding these basic transaction phrases can be a lifesaver, especially if you're in a busy marketplace or a small shop where they might not speak your language.
Another great phrase is, "Where is?" You'll use this a lot for directions like, "Where is the nearest bus stop?" or "Where is the bathroom?" It's one of the most useful sentence structures you can have in your travel toolkit.
And if you get lost, you can say, "Can you help me find?" or "I'm looking for example, "Can you help me find the museum?" or "I'm looking for my hotel." It's a good way to ask locals for help if you're feeling a little disoriented.
Now let's talk about some common phrases you'll need in specific travel situations. For example, when you're at the airport. What are some phrases that come to mind, Alex?
At the airport, you'll definitely want to know how to check in. You might say, "I'd like to check in, please," or "I have a reservation under the name of..." Another important phrase is, "Where is the departure gate?" You don't want to miss your flight because you didn't know where to go.
Yes, and if you're going through security, you might hear, "Please remove your shoes," or "Do you have any liquids in your bag?" Understanding those instructions will make the process much easier.
Exactly. Once you've landed, you'll probably need to get a taxi or find public transportation. You can ask, "Where can I get a taxi?" Or, "Is there a bus to the city center?" And if you're using ride-sharing apps, you might want to know how to tell the driver where to pick you up or drop you off.
Oh, and don't forget about when you're checking into a hotel. You might say, "I have a reservation," or "I'd like to check in." If there's an issue with your room, like if it's not ready, you could ask, "How long will it take?" Or, "Can I leave my bags here until my room is ready?"
That's a good point. It's also useful to know how to ask for recommendations. You can say, "Do you have any recommendations for local restaurants?" Or, "What's the best way to get to the museum?" It's a great way to connect with locals and get the inside scoop on the best places to visit.
All right, Alex, it's story time. Let's share some of our favorite travel experiences and how we used English while traveling. I'll go first. So, a couple of years ago, I was in Japan, and I didn't speak much Japanese, but I was surprised by how much English helped me get around. One day, I was looking for a small traditional tea shop in Kyoto. I was lost and a little frustrated, so I stopped to ask for directions. I said, "Excuse me, do you know where this tea shop is?" I showed a picture of it to a local woman, and she smiled and said, "Follow me, I'll show you."
That's so cool. People are often so kind and helpful when you're lost. Did you use any other English phrases during that trip?
Definitely. I remember using the phrase, "How much does this cost?" a lot, especially in markets and souvenir shops. I also asked a lot of questions like, "Do you have this in another color?" Or, "Can I try this on?" Because I love shopping when I travel.
Who doesn't? All right, my turn. So, I was in Italy a few years ago, and I had this amazing experience in a small town called Cinque Terre. The thing is, my Italian is very basic, but I relied on English a lot. One day, I wanted to rent a bike to explore the coastline. I walked into a small shop and said, "Hi, do you rent bikes here?" The owner spoke a little English, so he replied, "Yes, how long?" And I said, "For the whole day, please." Then he showed me the bike and gave me some advice in broken English, but we understood each other.
That's awesome. Did you learn any new words during that trip?
Oh, yes. One of the words I learned was puncture. I got a flat tire while I was cycling, so I had to say, "Excuse me, I have a puncture. Can you help me fix it?" It was a little stressful at the time, but I got through it and ended up learning something new.
That's the beauty of travel, isn't it? Even when things don't go perfectly, you're still learning and growing.
All right. Now let's give our listeners some pronunciation tips. One thing I've noticed is that when you're in a foreign country, it's not just about speaking the right words, but also pronouncing them clearly so people understand you. Sarah, do you have any tips for our listeners?
Absolutely. My first tip is to slow down. When we're nervous or in a hurry, we tend to speak quickly, and that can make it harder for people to understand us. So, take your time when asking questions or giving directions. For example, instead of rushing through, "Where is the bus stop?" Try saying it a bit slower. "Where is the bus stop?" It gives the listener time to process what you're saying.
That's a really good point. Another tip is to focus on your vowel sounds. In English, vowels can sound very different depending on the word, so practicing them can really help. For example, in the words bus and stop, the U and O sounds are short and clear. If you pronounce them carefully, it makes your speech more understandable.
And don't forget about intonation. English is a language where the rise and fall of your voice can change the meaning of a sentence. For example, when you're asking a question like, "Where is the train station?" your voice should go up at the end. It signals to the listener that you're asking something, not just making a statement.
That's great advice. Well, we hope this episode has been helpful for all our travel-loving listeners out there. Whether you're booking your next flight or just dreaming about your next adventure, remember that learning English is part of the journey. Practice these phrases, listen to native speakers, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we learn.
Exactly. And most importantly, have fun with it. Traveling is all about new experiences, meeting new people, and discovering new places. So use your English as a tool to open doors and create memories.
Thanks for joining us today on our podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to send us a message. Until next time, happy travels and happy learning.
Bye for now.